The middleweight champion Adesanya, who will make his belt defense tomorrow against American Sean Strickland, said in an interview that he wouldn't mind fighting Khamzat Chimaev if he beats Paulo Costa. Hello fighters. This is World of MMA channel. In today's video I will give a prediction for a potential fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Israel Adesanya. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's go! Khamzat Chimaev stormed into the UFC. In recent history, since the promotion moved away from one-day tournaments, no one has managed to get 2 wins in 10 days. And not just any victory, but 2 bright and early victories. And what's even more amazing is the special attitude of Dana White, who doesn't even deny it. The UFC boss has confirmed it repeatedly. Khamzat, who was born in the Chechen Republic, moved to Sweden when he was 19 and fights for the Scandinavians. But back to MMA. After his bright debut, Boers got Gerald Meerschaert. But before that fight, the next one against the famous Damian Maia was already being discussed. The Brazilian was the 7th ranked fighter of the time. And beating him could make Khamzat even more popular. The Swede hardly needed a hype, because he is already well known to MMA fans after his outstanding debut. But a victory over an eminent opponent is another matter, because Chimaev's first 2 opponents in the UFC had only 1 victory under their belt. Meerschaert, Chimaev won by 1 punch in fact, and many said that Gerald was another sack. Tell that to Makhmud Muradov, whom the American strangled, interrupting the Uzbek fighter's streak of 14 wins. Khamzat never got the fight with Maia. He got coronavirus, recovered for a long time, and even announced the end of his career. It's a shame, because at that time it was already announced his fight against Leon Edwards. A victory over which would have practically guaranteed Boers a title shot. We had to start all over again, but in 3 fights Chimaev made such a strong statement that after more than a year of downtime, Boers got an opponent from the 11th ranked welterweight division. Khamzat didn't dominate Jean Liang, he outright humiliated him. Caught him, carried him to the goal, while conversing with White, beat him and choked him. Once again without missing a beat. Many had talked about an aura of invulnerability before, but after the fight against the Chinese, that talk intensified. In April last year, Khamzat faced former title challenger and at the time fighter ranked number 2 in the division, Gilbert Burns. Chimaev missed more punches than he had in his entire career, exchanged a lot of punches with his opponent, fell, and completely backed away from the game plan. But most importantly, Boers showed his spirit, and 15 minutes later he scored his first career win by decision. Having beaten Burns, Khamzat had to go into the fight against Stockton gangster Nate Diaz. The fight was supposed to be at welterweight, but Khamzat was unable to make the weight due to his doctor forbidding him to raise the remaining pounds. As a result, Diaz refused to fight Chimaev, and experienced welterweight Kevin Holland came out against the Chechen. But this fight was held at intermediate weight. Khamzat started the fight with a struggle and again finished it in the first round by strangling Holland. Israel Adesanya has a crazy amount of experience, 80 fights in kickboxing, several fights in boxing, and that's just in the pros. And also 23 victories in mixed martial arts, 12 of them in UFC. And often together with the victory and a bonus of 50,000. Israel is the most versatile and technical puncher, perhaps even in the history of MMA. And before the fight with Romero, which was boring, he took the title in a brutal manner from Whitaker, who, in turn, spent 10 bright rounds against the same Cuban. And then Israel knocked out the undefeated Paulo Costa in a one-sided fight, after which he attempted to become a double champion. In March 2021, Adesanya accepted Jan Blachowicz' offer and moved up to light heavyweight to take the title from the Polish fighter. It came out unsuccessfully, but Adesanya steadfastly accepted that disappointing defeat and decided to return to his home division for a rematch with Martin Vettori. The Italian is essentially the only one who has been able to compete with Israel in the middleweight division during his time in the UFC. Although there was still a war with Gastelum, but the way Adesanya spent the final round says that Kelvin was good, but lost by decision. Out of the top 10 rankings, he beat everyone who deserved a title shot, and Vettori and Whitaker twice. It was Robert Israel who fought last February. The fight came out close, but the belt stayed with Adesanya. He later beat Cannonier without any problems. This was followed by 2 fights against Alex Pereira. In the first fight, dominated the entire fight and in the end missed a punch and lost by TKO. And in the second fight he took his own, knocking out the Brazilian already in the second round. Let's start with the striking technique of Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat has a knockout punch that has hurt Ikram Aliaskarov and Gerald Merchant. And also in the fight with Gilbert Burns, we noticed that he hits well with jabs and also with hooks. But he also misses a lot. If he goes into an open fight with Adesanya, he could get knocked out. Now let's get to the champion Israel Adesanya. He's one of the best punchers in UFC history. Adesanya has cleaned up the entire middleweight division thanks to his striking technique. He has a plethora of arm and leg combinations in his arsenal, as well as knockout power. In his last fight, he knocked out Brazilian Alex Pereira cleanly. If we choose a favorite here, then it will definitely be Israel Adesanya. Let's start with the fight of Khamzat Chimaev. He has the potential to become a UFC champion because of his wrestling. Except for the fight with Burns, he didn't leave a single chance for his opponents in the other fights. He's taken them to the floor and then he's doing a submission or grand and pound. His physical strength helps him lift his opponents and throw them to the canvas. Now let's move on to the champion. Adesanya doesn't particularly stand out with his wrestling. He mostly defends against takedowns and throws near the net. And also if he sees that the opponent is weaker in wrestling than him, then he doing takedowns. For example, he used this tactic in the first fight with Pereira. If to choose a favorite here it will be Khamzat Chimaev. I think Israel Adesanya is going to win this fight. Khamzat will try to wrestle from the first minute. Maybe he will throw a couple of takedowns, but he will be tired by the second or third round. That's when the champion will start to play his game. He'll outbox him at range and won't miss any more takedowns. So he can win by decision. What do you guys think? Write your opinions in the comments. Bye everybody.